Universalist Walt Whitman talked of the open road, and we talk as UUs of being open-minded and maybe we wouldn't suspect that at a Unitarian Universalist church that there would be a sermon on NASCAR. But I'm hopeful that this congregation is open-minded enough to take the road that always turns left. Left and left and left and left. NASCAR should be a natural. The night is dark. The moon is shining. The corn has been squeezed and the sugar has been distilled and poured into jars. It's time to deliver. The moonlight is the only light backlighting the back road. The headlights are off because the revenuers are watching, looking for people selling alcohol without paying the tax. They say that it's a Southern thing, but it's as old as the United States. The Whiskey Rebellion of 1791 and 94 was over taxes and started south of Pittsburgh, and the protests traveled up and down the Appalachian Mountain chain. By the mid-20th century, the ox cart was replaced by the automobile, racing down the back roads, escaping the law of the land. A fast car was a source of pride, and a good driver an asset. People would race their cars informally for bragging rights. But in December of 1947, Bill France of Daytona Beach, Florida, organized a meeting and decided to discuss the problems facing stock car racing. Things came together quickly. The first NASCAR sanctioned race was held on Daytona's beach course on February 15th, 1948, just 2 months after the organizational meeting. And the sport has grown since then. Corporate sponsorship of the series was by the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. Have you ever heard of them? That began in 1971, and NASCAR's premier division was then known as the Winston Cup Series. In 1976, this division took the lead in worldwide motorsports attendance. Television exposure grew as well. The 1979 Daytona 500 became the first 500-mile race in history to be telecast live in its entirety. From 1993 to 98, Cup Series at-track attendance grew 57% to more than 6.3 million. In 1989, just 10 years after the first 500-mile race was broadcast, the Cup Series schedule was televised, nearly all of them live. The TV story was providing a remarkable success as the viewership for the Daytona 500 grew to 6 million, from 6 million to 18.7 million viewers between 1993 and 2002. We live in a town where name recognition is based on cigarettes. Salem as a town was formed in 1753. Salem cigarettes were introduced in 1956. Winston was formed as a town in 1849, but Winston cigarettes were introduced in 1954. Winston became a top-selling brand partly because of the sponsorship of NASCAR. If you travel and tell someone you're from Winston, many will think of Winston cigarettes or Winston Cup racing. That's who you are, folks. Identity is a religious issue. We have our personal identity by our accomplishments and who we hope to be, But our identity is also shaped by forces larger than ourselves. Even if you have never watched a race, your identity as a resident of Winston-Salem has been shaped by NASCAR. Moonshine and cigarettes, paid for those who want to drive fast. All these things are associated with being an outlaw, an anti-hero who can't be told what to do. That the sport took hold in the South is no surprise. Conquered by the Civil War and the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Firearms, and Tobacco have to be resisted. NASCAR is a sport that has glorified the bad guy. One of the biggest boons to the sport, that after people sat and watched that 500-mile race for the first time in 1979, because one of the Allison brothers bumped Cale Yarborough, there was a fist fight in the pits after the TV show, and that ignited the fervor of people wanting to watch this sport. This intense rivalry and thuggery struck a nerve with Americans all over the country. Psychologist Eric Erickson argues that the task of a teenager is identity formation. They need to become something other than their parents, and if they can't find a positive identity, they will find a negative identity, just to be different. Drinking, smoking, and reckless driving are common symbols of teenage rebellion. After World War II, America was prosperous, but southern states lagged behind, a perfect recipe for the formation of negative identity. But in recent years, our nation's supremacy has been challenged, especially in car making. And our nation, at the same time, has embraced NASCAR and has fallen away from that Indianapolis open-wheel racing with drivers like names with Emerson Fittipaldi and all sorts of foreign-sounding names. Our cars may no longer be the fastest and the best technologically, but our drivers are the toughest. Hard-driving men and an occasional woman who don't take nothing from nobody. These anti-heroes have a function in our lives, and they have a function in religion. The classical hero in myth is outlined by Joseph Campbell. The hero is introduced in this ordinary world where he receives the call to adventure. He's reluctant at first, but is encouraged by the wise old man or woman to cross the first threshold, where he encounters tests and helpers and reaches the innermost cave where he endures the supreme ordeal, seizes the sword or the treasure, and is pursued on the road back to his world. He's resurrected and transformed by the experience. He returns to his ordinary world with a treasure, a boon, or an elixir to benefit his world. Racing can follow this model. The poor country boy finds he can make money racing on the local dirt track. A veteran notices that he has time and talents and guides him through the ranks until he reaches the big time. He races through the chase, each track bringing new problems to solve, and he wins the championship and uses the money to build a garage in his hometown that allows other novices to make the heroic journey. Probably the best example of this is Richard Petty, who was mentored by his own father and became the king of stock car racing. And after achieving that goal, had the long road home, which included many years where he raced beyond his prime, and having a son who became a driver but never was as good as his father. And sadly, a grandson who died at the age of 20 trying to qualify for a race. This tragedy fits the pattern. of the hero, the myth that after the victory is won, the road home is the hardest journey. This crisis caused a change of focus in the Petty family. They built the Victory Junction camp for chronically and terminally ill children. And this charity is the favorite charity of NASCAR drivers, those who choose to face death weekly. Bring back something to help children who are fighting for survival. But mythology also contains another type of hero, the trickster god. This is the anti-hero, the one that fights the system, the one that resists order. The trickster is often a cultural hero. In Greece, Prometheus stole fire from the gods. In the Native American culture, the coyote and raven did the same. In Norse mythology, Loki disrupts the order of the gods. In Judaism, Jacob tricks Esau out of his birthright, and through struggling with an angel, has his name changed to Israel, which a country was named after. And the translation of Israel is, he who wrestles or fights with God. That's an anti-hero name. Now, the Jesus story, as told by Paul, follows the classical hero pattern of good boy done, country boy done good. After resurrection, he descends into hell and brings back eternal life for all those followers. Paul, steeped in Greek culture, has this Greek myth formed down, including the descent into hell, which is the word Paul used was Hades, which was the same place that Hercules, another son of God, went to. But the gospel writers portray a Jesus who is the trickster, who's always defying authority and mystifying people with miracles, and always has these narrow escapes as the crowd is pursuing him, and as the ultimate escape through the resurrection. In NASCAR, the ultimate trickster god was Dale Earnhardt Sr. He was a racer who defied the rules. He would run people into the wall. In IndyCar, or open-wheel racing, the cars are faster, but they're also more fragile. You do any bumping in those things, you break a tie rod and you go careening off. They don't bump each other in other types of racing. But the NASCAR, the stock car, is a little bit more solid, and they bump each other. They even have techniques called bump drafting, where they hit each other in the bumper to help people move faster. It's dangerous and scary and rough. And this, people say it's not racing unless there's rubbing. And Earnhardt would trade paint with anybody. He became known as the Intimidator. He said, you win some, you lose some, you wreck some. Rubbing is racing. The rules and the cars are pushed to the limits. And sometimes you cross the line. Earnhardt says, you got to be closer to the edge than ever to win. And sometimes you go over the edge. And I don't mean driving either. When Earnhardt crashed in 2001, it stunned fans. The trickster god is always supposed to escape. This was the rule breaker who always escaped, who caused and was in many wrecks, but still managed to get through. The news coverage was stunning for a northern boy who had just moved down south. It was nonstop for over a week, and a statue has been erected in his hometown of Kannapolis. So many people who identified with him were stunned. And you will see stickers with Dale's number 3 with a halo or wings. And anybody who knew Dale in life knew that he was no angel. And he would laugh at the idea of ever being portrayed as an angel, because he was I can't use the words in a sermon. But talk to anybody who knows NASCAR, they will give you some choice words. But he was an avenging angel for every person who felt they had to bend the rules to fight authority. Dale was the anti-authoritarian god of an anti-authoritarian sport. He is yet to be replaced. Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson have combined to win 8 championships since Earnhardt won his 7. But they don't have the same level of adulation. They don't fit either hero story. They're from California. And Jeff was born in Indianapolis. And so, and they were racing from little kids, and they do good because they're supposed to be good because they were trained in a sport and learned how to race, and they do it well. So they don't fit the hero story or the anti-hero story. No one denies that they're great drivers, but they are not revered like Petty, the classical hero, or Earnhardt, the anti-hero. The current pantheon of NASCAR drivers is truly polytheistic. About 43 drivers line up for each race, and each driver has his or her own devotees. People create shrines in their homes. They have t-shirts and model cars and numbers on their own cars, and their choice of colors or which product to buy in stores is determined by their driver and the sponsors. They'll have personal reasons for following any given driver. Some follow them through the newspaper, TV, and radio, and many others literally follow them. For a while, I followed Bobby Labonte, simply because it was fun to say his name. And second, because my son had a video game, one of the few that I could compete with him. And at that time, Bobby Labonte was driving a green car, so I could actually see which car was mine. Well, he no longer drives for that battery company, and he's always finishes about 37th. But I still kind of feel nostalgic for Bobby Labonte because it's just a wonderful name to say. But people literally follow these people to race. They have campers that camp out on the infield of some of the larger tracks. They make pilgrimages. That the interlude with spring comes early, and for many people, the first sign of spring is the Daytona 500, traveling down to Florida where it is a bit warmer and camping out on the infield. And they have to do this on Sunday. In the middle of the Bible Belt, they skip church to go and attend races. Now, the races are often preceded by prayer, and it's a Christian veneer to the underlying polytheism. Not only are the drivers admired, but the companies that sponsor them get consumer loyalty. Should one drink Budweiser? Or maybe now they should drink an Amp sports drink. Miller Lite or Coors? Who wins the race, UPS or FedEx? Should one shop at Lowe's or Home Depot? NASCAR ultimately worships the god of competition. Drivers compete with each other, and sponsors compete with each other. There is a loyalty that has a high value of picking your champion and riding with them. Brand loyalty and driver loyalty. People identify with the heroes and anti-heroes and all the drivers in between. Now there are those who look down at NASCAR for the commercialism and blind loyalty. And there are things that I could talk about. They don't seem a very green sport. I could go in that direction, but I want all of us to realize that we each have a spiritual need for belonging and identity. Are you rooting for your alma mater during March Madness? Or have they already tanked in the ACC? Or Big Ten for some of us? Do you identify with the degree that you've earned? Who are the people of your tribe? Do you identify with a particular hero, a politician, an entertainer, a religious leader? Myths, both ancient and modern, give us patterns to worship a hero or anti-hero. We project our ideas onto a people or a person or a product. Depending on one's perspective, Jesus could be the anti-hero, questioning authority, or the hero son of God who survived his trial on earth. A politician might be a revolutionary, overturning the system, or a technocrat, reforming it from within. If you feel down and out, you most likely will identify with the anti-hero. If you've been successful, you will identify with the hero. Your hero may or may not be a NASCAR driver. But something in all of us wants to be a winner, or at least finish well. Our heroes tell us about what we aspire to be and how we intend to get there. Will we run clean or bend the rules? Who will sponsor our efforts? What mentors will guide us? If we complete our quest, what will we bring back for our people? Ultimately, we are the heroes of our own lives. We each have a race to run. May we bless and be blessed.